Okay. Endlessly looping infinite cylindrical dimensions. And so, welcome to tonight's episode, dear viewer in manifestation. I find that all human beings have a similarity to plants in a garden. In ancient cultures, they acknowledged it as if there was a garden of existence, and there are various ways that intelligence is moving and growing in this garden. And so, the human being, any human being who is present right now in 2020, you are part of the garden of manifest existence. And with that comes the opportunity of the subjective realms. This talk is mainly focused, pretty much what the title is trying to imply is that I found a way to, I saw two dimensions in a cylinder. And for a second, I was kind of wondering about that tunnel. That's many stories and narratives. They say at the end of life, there's a tunnel and the light at the end of the tunnel. And for a moment, I kind of saw the light and the darkness of the tunnel from two sides to be a dualism. And then I wondered about inside the tunnel, the endless cyclical activity. And so for a second, it's many times I have kind of wondered about the geometrical structure of the universe, and I'm telling you, it comes close to the best way to say the cylinder and the spiral are the closest geometric shapes I can say. That means evolution is a spiral. The clue is in our DNA. And so this picture is a fancy picture I've chosen for the wallpaper, but really the picture I had in mind was a cylinder. And so again, inside the cylinder, if you look to the left and the right, you see an endless loop. You see the yin yang. Sorry, not the yin yang. You see the infinite relationship of the duality. So what does that mean? That means between the good and bad, there is a cylindrical space where in that space you can say it's endless loops. In other words, cyclical existence is infinitely occurring dualistically. And therefore, the infusion, if we were to draw a Venn diagram between that which appears as infinite and that which is dualistic, only to see that it is the reflection of duality to itself that accesses infinity. This is how Mr. Within explains the dimensions of this plane of existence: 0, 1, 2, infinity. Usually, most of my talks tend to focus on the zero dimension, the one, and the dualistic. But in this episode, I'm trying to do something that many philosophers, many people on the planet have attempted, many scholars, I can say. The intellectual vision has always attempted to measure all that it has perceived. And so, what does that mean? That means in all the eyes that have opened, that have endured in this plane of existence, patterns projected, patterns through behavior, through care, through attitude. And as lineages move down through time, it was as if there was a march, there was a sort of movement of all beings towards that which appeared alive. And so, what we can say that there was some intelligence that we as a creature had, that we survived, that we cared to survive. And now we have reached an era, like a new paradigm, I can say, where it is no longer enough for the individual to survive. And there's many people in the world who, I remember hearing this documentary and like seeing this documentary about Japan, and it was kind of tragic. It was showing how so many people die alone in their homes. And so, of course, it makes sense. Overpopulation, more competition, less decency to share. And I thought about this, before I even wrote this title, I had written Loneliness of the Gods. I wanted to speak about that. But then I kind of saw this geometrical shape kind of fulfilling that and more. That you, as a human being, your strength as a human being is in your recognition of the value of the attention that genetically has endured so long. In the chat section, Savo, Savo has written golden ratio is true. I'll tell you this. If we were to try to map the evolution of consciousness in a spiral, you know what that would mean? That would mean that change, how can I tell you? Um, Guys, I can tell you this. Geometry, we have a relationship that is pretty static with it. Very few people see the dynamism of geometry in their inner realms. Most may see it externally in like a movie screen or somewhere and be inspired by it. But really, what it is you see, just like how you don't control your breath, you don't tell your heart to beat. It just beats. Your intelligence as a being has the ability to preserve prior to thought. Now, once this ability is recognized, then your inner realms are navigated by the trust in your attention. If you don't trust your attention, the flight will have turbulence, and most likely uh, a co pilot needs to take over. What I mean by that is, I remember in a book I had written, like like a lot of the audience may not believe, but the first book I actually wrote was this kind of giant book called The Great Work. And in it, in the last chapter, there was some there I had drawn a diagram, called it the web of Inas, Inas, Inas. And this web was showing in a spiral way how consciousness is experiencing itself as a field. So what does that mean? That means to take this spiral analogy. So let's say we acknowledge the cylindrical relationship of, the two circles at the end of the cylinder are like the good and the bad, the darkness and the light of the tunnel. And then the left and right of the tunnel is just cycle. It's a cycle. There was a time I remember I was sitting at a dining table and I had like one of the most mystical thoughts ever. It was this image I had of myself where, just like how a tree has roots, I, in that moment for a second, saw as if my mind, like literally my hair, as if playfully geometric roots. I don't know how to explain it, but like geometric roots from my head kind of endlessly going into the sky. It was like this playful abstraction my mind for a moment entertained. And then it even went superior because then I began to see that every moment in the spiral is a new self. That means it can't be an evolution of self if the world has not changed. That means either the world has to change internally or externally, or novelty will cannot be recognized. And so change, which has haunted many people in their lives, if welcomed, is their new self, is access to the new eyes of the energy that is being conscious of itself. Really, what it is it's an exploration of vision. It's like we're as creatures only through an objective evolution. Now we have come to a point where we're like, whoa, did matter evolve into a thought to itself? And we see, yeah. It's fascinating how much of the world is arbitrarily kept. It's abstract. There's so much abstraction coloring in the moment, and when you realize it's your responsibility to have the inner realms apply, life strangely honors it. Playfully in my talks, I've said the lords of karma watch. They watch silently the noise of man. And I said that the lords of karma will clear the clouds of darkness away when the human being realizes, okay, regardless of any story ever told to me, regardless, it is the it how can I tell you, the new is strangely hollow to the past. That means there's a quote by Khalil Gibran. He says, your children belong to the house of tomorrow, somewhere where you will never reach even in your dreams. And what he means is that novelty brings with itself a world. And so, really, when you see people have different ages, even people have different experiences, means people have different depths of various extractions of their world. How the world has come to them as a narrative, and how they have seen themselves awake as a conscious character. And this conscious character usually, because we evolved from nature, from like it's like right now I'm sitting here and giving a podcast, but if I go really far back in my lineage or everybody's lineage, we'll see some savageness. Our ancestors, it's like there's a huge potential many of them could have been savage to one another, but you see something endured. And that's what fascinates me. It's like seeing a marathon run. Let me tell you what the life is. Life is like a marathon runner that has gotten to the finish line, but the marathon runner has ran so much. It's like not even the finish line. The marathon runner ran from one town to another to share a message, imagine. And so we are on the receiving end of the message, and we're like, whoa, man, did you run? Did you run from that whole town to here? And so that same shock, it's as if, for example, some people are like, hey, man, I'm going to believe blindly that this guy ran here. Some people says, no, we need evidence that he ran here. We have to trace back all his steps. We got to literally have him reversely step back all steps to see. And then you see, what I'm trying to say is, it's a moment where a lot has happened and your eyes are open in a system. And it is okay. It is okay to acknowledge systems, because especially the children 200, 400 years, you will find yourself in the egoic mirror room. It is so important for man to be able, through the simplest sense of himself, to be present with the cosmos, beyond language. That's the advancement. That means the advancement of our civilization, the one that Mr. Within is here telling you right now, it cannot be written about in newspapers. It is the evolution of an attention from material relationships to immaterial relationships. In other words, we were an object that was unconsciously moving. We consciously move. Now we were a subject unconsciously moving. Now we're consciously moving. So this awareness beyond subjectivity, it is allowing the human being to see that there are out attributeless fields of intelligence. I feel this is the great challenge of the philosophers of the modern era, to wonder what collective consciousness behaviorally means. So Savo, in the chat section, when you say golden ratio, is it true? And when you say numbers are everywhere, of course, mathematics is a language, and a language is a translation of a relationship that is existential. It's like the truth is like the branches, and our imagination is the wind between them. Our imagination of I find the imagination of the human being is where sensory perception goes after being processed. So imagine your eyes opened, you perceived the world, you engaged, you moved, and some stuff happened. Now, all that stuff will most likely, like the ego has a gravitation. That means the same way a person looks for a jacket in winter, the same way the psychology tries to be an individual in the unknown. Anytime a person feels more unknown, feels the presence of the unknown, they're going to more want to know things or hold on to a certain knowledge. Because what it is that this is what took me a while to realize. This is the risk of being dishonest with your own experience. The risk is that if you're not abiding uh, by a self that your inner childhood memories would not be ashamed of, that means kind of like, let me tell you like this. Just like how the human being wears different clothing, the human being throughout the lifetime wears different ideological narratives. That means the mind takes a certain shape and embodies it, makes it its home, makes itself the originator of the world. But this is why they said the mind is a lousy master but a great servant in ancient times. Why? Why did they say that? Because the mind is a vehicle. And the vehicle is not the driver. That's the cool thing. Our species, all the knowledge we have created so far till 2020, it is a magnificent moment where the sky cracks. I remember in certain Abrahamic books, when they explained the apocalypse, they said that the sky would break. In certain religious books, the sky would break. And even that there were like seven skies. There wasn't just one sky, like as if there were different parallel dimensions of the earth. And so the skies break. So you know what that means? The sky breaking, it's kind of like a simulation collapsing. And so I began to see it's the subjective simulation that has claimed certainty in a changing world that has made it into ignorance. So what I mean is I feel it's the evolution beyond thought is technically an end of days. It is the end of days of living as a subject only, or being obsessed with subjectivity only. For me, there's so much to life. It's like I'm telling you, a human being masters these qualities, these skills, and I'm telling you, you will be able to pilot in this plane of existence very easily. Silence, sound, Be aware of this duality. Stillness and movement. Be aware of this duality. Be comfortable with both angles and even the third angle, which is the witness of both. Pretty much, I'm telling you, relax, relax as a human being, and actually observe for the first time in accordance to who you are, you know, which is a novel exploration. It's something that your effort gives value to, not your ideology. And I feel there is nothing really more karmically liberating than abiding by one's design. Everything has a design. It's just that the designs can't be comprehended or cannot be translated into our subjective realms. A civilization beyond thought. And another duality that the person needs to be able to confront is the known and the unknown. And for me, the unknown was a source of fear, but it's hilarious. As I have kind of run laps around the sun, I'm telling you, it's becoming a source of joy. It is energizing me. The unknown used to kind of make me fear change that would be inevitable. But then I realized, what if we are the unknown? What if everything we know about ourselves as a species is opinions in the void about an unknown movement? And so, how does the species honor this unknown movement? And it's being given clues. It's as if reality is some strange Rubik's Cube. And what is that clue? That clue is that nature is a movement at once. And that's the grand thing, you know? It's like some people may be listening to me right now speak, but I am telling you, you know how many majestic sounds if all of existence was one moment could be heard? Do you know that beyond being a thought, what are you left to? You are left in the novelty of the experiencer defining the thought. And so these endlessly looping kind of infinite cylindrical dimensions is a suggestion that as man looks at duality, he sees the space between duality being cyclical loops. I don't know how to say it. It's like a tunnel. Literally, like if a skateboarder was skateboarding, it'd be like circles. You know? Life is not only too spontaneous to measure, it is livelihood. I don't know how to say it, but the fact that we're not objects in a snapshot photo, I am somehow strangely as a being grateful. I am grateful that things change because that means there's more to see. And really, it's a coin flip of an eternal mind or a temporary body. For me, I kind of started treating my intelligence like an instrument. Imagine somebody gave you an instrument. Imagine every person on the planet, their brain is like the universe gave them an instrument in here. It's the universe is like, here, you get this DNA, play this. And you're like, I don't know how to play this instrument, but the universe did you to join the symphony of the evolution of a species in the cosmos. every person is given this instrument of their own intelligence. I don't know. I don't know why in this life there is the option of being obsessed with known phenomena and being obsessed with unknown phenomena. But either way, regardless of the state of mind, as the state of mind changes, so has the world. And so, what it is that if I was to be supremely honest and tell you what is here right now speaking to you, I would not identify it with my this biological cells. They have been changing since day one. I will not identify it with my thoughts. They have been changing since day one. I would say that it's just an awareness to a familiar self. That is the only thing that's I feel is the link of the unknown and the known. How the known, it does not fear its presence. It is empowered by it. In my childhood, there were many moments where I had this kind of being a kid and I went into an intense situation and I was intimidated out of thinking for myself in that moment. And so what happens is pretty much, let's say a person in this life doesn't try. Let's say you do nothing. Let's see what the worst case would look like, and then we'll move on to the best case. Okay, so the worst case would be a person does nothing, so it would mean literally a game of life is happening a day and the system is becoming, like, let's say, fail. Let's say the person reaches the edge of like the bottom of failure. What happens? You don't apply effort, fail, fail, fail. You don't apply effort, fail, fail, fail. You don't apply effort, fail, fail, fail. And this failure will go on as long as it is set in motion until the person realizes that they are looping into what the past wanted to be, rather than them kind of like the refresh browser, like not refresh browser, like the a web browser, you press command R and it refreshes, is rather than the person refreshing their attention to attaining their value from where they are in the present moment, rather than their subjective kind of uh, and self-entertained inner landscapes. So what I'm saying is, strangely, I felt knowledge was just about exposure to design, various designs. But then I came to see it's too alive. There's something too alive for poetry to capture. This is why the most greatest poetic works you find, and for me, like the poets such as Attar, Rumi, Hafez, you know, Omar Khayyam, these Khayyam, these poets, for me, they showed me that language's edge is the seeing the ultimate within itself. So that's the cool thing. It's like the person has moments where they're engaged in life, and the person has moments where they stop doing anything to see what is moving in the moment. As if the person for throughout the day they just stop and go sit in the grass by a park. Can you imagine like being like the, let's say, a billionaire, and a billionaire in the middle of the day he just goes outside to the local park and sits on the grass in like some sort of like cross-like way and just looks, and the guy's just sitting on the grass looking, and for a moment that's billionaire CEO stops. Imagine for a moment he stops all the games that he's playing, all the applications that are open in his mind like a phone. You know, this person just closes all the application and for a moment just breathes. And I can tell you the fastest way to your greatest intelligence is by listening and being conscious of your breathing. There's something strange that when a person, the sound of their own breath becomes music for them, then that's, there's something, I don't know how to say it. It's like it's the breath is the key to the door of the universal self. The breath is incredible. Even the rhythms of it, most people don't recognize. But if I told you to just visualize, for example, like a blue sphere in the air, you know, it's blue geometrical sphere, you know. So imagine a blue glowing sphere to make it cool. So let's say you're visualizing this. Now, this blue glowing sphere, if you are very sensitive, you'll notice as you inhale and exhale, something shifts, like literally like wipers on a window of your car. Through inhalation and exhalation, the texture of the thoughts, how it's projected, shifts a little bit. And underlying the awareness, once you become aware of your breath, you automatically are being stabilized as being aware of sound. So ultimately your own speech and any sort of sound in the moment, you become conscious of the silence before. When you work from that silence, when silence doesn't bother you, you're kind of third, like your throat chakra, as the old school yogis would say. Your throat chakra opens strangely when you are comfortable with silence. When you're comfortable with the absence of your desire, then it doesn't matter if you get the desire. That means that when you're comfortable with the absence, that means whether you get something or don't get something, you have understood that it goes on, the show goes on. And that's the remarkable thing about life. You know, even stretching from Shakespeare, you know, and even to the Vedic concept of Leela, that life is a play, it is a play of forces. And so I thought about it, and I'm like, how fascinating that it's not just kids playing, you know, soccer in the streets, the forces of the universe are playing with one another. And so there is an animate quality beyond the description of how far our language has evolved. The opposite of technology, Savu, in the chat section, I would tell you it is the user of technology. The most crucial thing is being conscious of your subjective realm. And as Chung Tzu, the Zen master, he would say, thought and belief, it is like leaves of a tree. They, as the seasons pass, you don't even have the same texture of a belief when you change as a person. You know, that means even though people may see you as a person and be like you're the same person, but how many ways have you changed as a being? And if we say the experience of existence, or existence is inputting subjective experience, the output is subjective experience. It's like objective movement is causing us to wonder about subjective movement. I'm going to go into a quote tunnel of Rumi quotes. And I feel Rumi is a very, everybody knows who Rumi is. Uh, but I think it's good to dive into his quotes and see how his mind was open to language. Okay. By the way, the poet Rumi, like 700 years ago, he was like the Sufi mystic from Persia. Anyways, Rumi says, always remember, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think, and twice as beautiful as you'd ever imagine. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. Rumi says, goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes. Because for those who love with heart and soul, there is no such thing as separation. And this is the case that the mystical state of mind, guys, will take the person into feeling like this is why there's a sort of polytheistic atmosphere in the Vedic tradition because it's as if God is in everything, right? God is pretty much everything. But for example, Abrahamic religion, everything, as someone said, is God's. That means God is the owner of the universe, but in the Vedic tradition, God is the universe. So, anyways, Rumi says, when I run after what I think I want, my days are a furnace of stress and anxiety. If I sit in my own place of patience, what I need flows to me, and without pain. From this I understand that what I want also wants me, is looking for me and attracting me. There is a great secret here for anyone who can grasp it. And that's true, guys. This is pretty much the logos tapping you on the shoulder. The shoulder of your heart of hearts, you know. Rumi says, listen with ears of tolerance, see through the eyes of compassion, speak with the language of love. And honestly, I could totally see back in the day, people were so much more savage that it's like, what can you say to animals? You know, you're like, love yourselves, you freaks. Oh man, the silliness is more than usual tonight, guys. You know. Rumi says, whenever you're alone, remind yourself that God has sent everyone else away so that there's only you and Him. Oh, that's nice. Rumi says, the inspiration you seek is already within you. Be silent and listen. And this is, guys, like even Da Vinci would say this to you, you know, that there's an inspiration that arises from your own authenticated experience. Rumi says the art of knowing is knowing what to ignore. Rumi says, I love my friends neither with my heart nor with my mind. Just in case heart might stop, mind can forget. I love them with my soul. Soul never stops or forgets. Rumi says, the quieter we become, the more we can hear. Rumi says, raise your words, not voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder. Rumi says you have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. I'm pretty sure every young girl who watches soap opera shows agrees with that. Yeah. Rumi says a candle never loses any of its light while lighting up another candle. Yeah, it pretty much doesn't have a choice, you know. Rumi says, if you want money more than anything, you'll be bought and sold your whole life. That is so true, guys. Any time your attention is obsessive about some temporal phenomena, it's like people acknowledge life as temporary, but their sense of ownership of stuff is not temporary. Rumi says, protect yourself from your own thoughts. What a remarkable statement. Protect yourself from your own thoughts. That means don't when if a thought arises, if there's a subjective appearance that is unsettling or unnecessary, just move towards the efficient. I am telling you, in any altered state of consciousness, if the person just navigates to a simplicity, and wonders what are the options, it's like find the simplest duality of your dimension, and most likely you'll find a door beyond it. There's something about being simple in a complex universe that already renders you complex. This is why Da Vinci would say simplicity is the most ultimate sophistication. And some people would be like, Da Vinci, that's a super complex sentence. Da Vinci would be like, hey guys, don't disturb. Rumi says, whatever happens to you, don't fall in despair. Even if all the doors are closed, the secret path will be there for you that no one knows. You can't see it yet, but so many paradises are at the end of this path. Be grateful. It is easy to thank after obtaining what you want. Thank before having what you want. Guys, that's the algorithm to good karma, okay? Thank before having what you want. Here, this Rumi is, spilling divine beans, guys, Rumi says, in every religion there is love, yet love has no religion. This is very true because love is a direct experience and religion is an indirect subjective landscape. So it's like you don't need to just be aware of your objective environment, but also your subjective environment. That's when knowledge become you care for it. It's so easy not to care for everything that everyone has done before you were born, you know. But it's a cool effort to see how your eyes can revoke the ancient, Rumi says, if it's your road and yours alone, others may walk it with you, but no one can walk it for you. Guys, I gotta share something about this because that road that no one can walk it for you, that is your mind. That is the responsibility of you as a creature to wonder, whoa, my attention's here right now. Rumi says, we carry inside us the wonders we seek outside us. Wow. Rumi says, not the ones speaking the same language, but the ones sharing the same feeling understand each other. Wow, this is so crucial. This is why too much of an intellectual approach can make you not feel the moment and therefore not meet the rhythm of it. This is very crucial. What Rumi is saying here is that emotional stability must be a priority before, what do you call it? Emotional stability before intellectual advancement. You know what that means? That means something more important than all the stuff I say about an advanced civilization and the educational system changing. More important than that is how we as creatures feel our emotions stabilize because it's worth the kind of civilization we can generate from that attitude. Life is fascinating. There are many choices, there are many roads. But the moment you choose one and you walk, it's like how can I tell you? Every key pressed by the improvisation of the piano player could have been said to be destined. Novelty is the proof of destiny, usually, or in the tech in Silicon Valley, it's like some people were known to say the best way to predict the future is to build it. Rumi says, "To love is human, to feel pain is human, yet to still love despite the pain is pure angel." Rumi says, "Do not look back. No one knows how the world ever began. Do not fear the future. Nothing lasts forever. If you dwell on the past or future, you will miss the moment. You will miss the moment." And that's very true, guys. Like, for example, right now, as I'm giving this talk, I am missing on various ways my moment. Rumi says, "Sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find space to enter. It shakes the yellow leaves from the bough of your heart so that fresh green leaves can grow in their place. It pulls up the rotten roots so that new roots hidden beneath have room to grow. Whatever sorrow shakes from your heart, far better things will take their place." And that is the ability of a human being, as much as they have an ability to attach to their past, to also be able to allow and welcome the new world into their mind. Because we have to think about it. If, for example, we think about like our timeline, let's say in the next 100 years, there's an extraterrestrial contact and it's an advanced civilization and they're kind or whatever, and they come and incorporate. And then you know what that would mean? I mean, every person at home would be like, whoa, 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 whoa. We have to live with another totally different, extraterrestrial, you like we have to consider extraterrestrial citizenship. So it would just automatically, the events that take place, it's like, here's the cool thing, guys. Just like how multiplayer online video games, the person signs up and signs up with a username and then is a character. It's strangely like we are all, the objective physical world is like the multiplayer online game where we all find ourselves in. So we are all like players in this game of matter. So now these players, they are being inspired. It's as if from a totally different dimension. So what I'm trying to say is that the cool thing about human living and the greater responsibility of evolution that this brings is that animals, they only see what they want to see. They can't see more. But man can see more than what he wants to see. And the only way he can is when he stops wanting to see. And then sight is given the freedom to be itself. Believe it or not, it's like sometimes your attitude could be like a scarf too tightly wrapped around your neck in winter. You know, your attitude can also be the loosening of the scarf. You can even live moments where you take the scarf of a subjectivity off and you're just present as a part of the nature of the cosmos. And I don't know what it is, what novelty has to do with the unknown. The most greatest things that happen in life, if you knew it before, it would reduce its greatness. And so that's the thing, that right now we are trying to see straight line in nature, and that is straight lines in nature, and that is the greatest clue to how language is a simulation, because we are choosing to filter perception. We cannot handle it raw. We have to be an individual or we feel we're confused. But can you imagine an advanced civilization where they can fearlessly be the sight in the void and be the sight of the matter? That means mastering immaterialism and materialism to a degree where conceptually it is just the presence of attention. That's the simplicity of existence. You see, your body, physical body, can bleed, but the awareness to existence cannot bleed. It cannot die. It is how space had nowhere to go, and that is why eternity was its own home. There's something that I feel like it's kind of like it's the only banner that I have been willing to hold. That means it's like my grandpa, I remember he told me something. He told me he was like this old school religious businessman, and and his whole networking in a religious business community was charity. Now, he told me, he was sharing his story of like how he entered the business, and I asked him like, what is all of it about? And he told me something strange. He said, just set up a store, set up a shop, and God will send you customers. He was a religious man. And I remember hearing that. And then it was as if it made sense because whatever net you throw into the sea will catch something after whatever duration of time. So if in anything a person wants to pursue, they can take the dimension of time aside, and they thought as if it was an eternal thing. Would I be willing to eternally do this? Not eternally, but just like it's like, you see, dimensions can deepen internally and externally. Externally, they deepen. Imagine like the movie Interstellar, the dude's traveling, physical space is changing, and then it could be internally, where through the acknowledgement of the black hole behind your eyes, which is the unknown, Mr. Within would say the next great language of all languages is geometry. And that's the banner I'm holding. That means if somebody asks me, like really force me to say what I like have to, if I had to believe in something, I would say I believe at most, design wise, this existence of ours is living geometry. It's geometry that's alive. And it's so alive that you cannot, because it's intelligent, you can't even, how can I say it? I'm seeing everything as if it has a geometrical translation. Everything. And so the subjective realms of everybody harbors different gifts. I remember in my writings I had some idea had come that it was like every person behind their eyes have has access to unique libraries, but it is up to them if they choose to care, because whatever that is not important for you won't advance. And all you will know something is important for you when you can't avoid it. You as something, the pull towards doing the action is more important. It's like when importance comes in, efficiency increases usually. Just think of all the employees who boss comes suddenly, they're all acting like they've been doing it professionally every day. There is a story I will share from Rishi Vyasa. Rishi Vyasa, some called him the incarnation of God in language. Rishi Vyasa, back in the day, somehow the intuition of his moment caused him to find himself writing 18 books on leaves. Like right now, there are times where even my live stream kind of like the Wi-Fi isn't like accurate, and I think about the difficulty of this, and then I think about Rishi Vyasa writing on leaves. And do you know how much faith you need to have in writing that? Because how long do leaves endure? So this man, he writes the Puranas, and these books endure as if there's an eternal command behind the words. That means what was written in this dimension, the planet is alive. If it's really important, it will carry it on into the future generations. If it's not important, it will dismiss its service and, you know, life goes on. So Rishi Vyasa writes these 18 books, and then he realizes there is still this gap. This something is off. It's as if there's this inner nostalgic kind of, not nostalgic, but this sort of inner anguish. Something is still incomplete. And so Rishi Vyasa, it's as if his heart is speaking to the cosmos, as if what next? And then an angel comes to him, as the story says. And the angel comes to Rishi Vyasa and says, Rishi Vyasa, you will not reach the evolution. You will not, your lifetime will not be complete until you write about your love of truth. The love of God, as in the context of the story would say. And so Rishi Vyasa, for the first time, he picked up the pen, and it was as if his soul was given freedom. And he writes what ends up being the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's a very epic book. It's kind of, if there was a museum for literature, this book would definitely be in that museum. And he writes this book, and then he is liberated because he did not seek an enlightenment that was ignoring his subconscious. That's the importance of honesty. It's a stable ground where the foundations of a free conscious life can be built on. It is required because once you are content with the simplest way you exist, then whatever complexity happens, it happens. It comes and goes. Intensity, the intensity that most people self fear, self dash fear in this life, it's self-imposed. And it's not self-imposed in the way as if it was your choice. Some things happen before we have interpreted them, and some things happen where before we have interpreted them. So that means it's like there is a subjective outline to the moment before the moment something happens in it, or there's something happens before there's a subjective outline. For example, an emergency or something intense, or suddenly there's a tsunami or something. For me, there was something strange, that there was something iridescent and divine, majestic about a storm. And I don't know what it was. That's why I'm saying it was iridescent. It was something strangely wondrous, as if it was the authority for intensity to exist. And so we are going on towards a direction as a species, I find, where we're moving on towards a multidimensional perception of our civilization. So it's like our civilization is evolving internally and externally. So think about technology, think about consciousness using various technologies. One technology it is using is the biological framework, imagine. And there's various ways the mind can frame the attention. And I need to slow down because really thought, I don't know. I feel there may be people who will feel I am speaking as if I'm ignorant to the future. There's some people may feel that I'm speaking, I'm ignorant to the past. And there's some people who may hear me and realize that eyes are walking alone into a field, a collective field. I feel there's going to be something more powerful than technology, than um, chemical experience and changes of the brain. Something more fascinating even than ideological, philosophical attitude and approach towards life. Something more, something where it's going to be rhythms of genius. I feel it's going to be reigning innovation. And I'm not sure how to kind of explain it, but what I feel it is that it's like once you study your attention, and your attention, it's like you must serve before you can command. So when I'm speaking about the human being trying to take strides towards the advancement and the completion of mind, what I'm saying really is that you got to pay attention to who you are, and who you are will be noticed to be at some point. Nobody has your eyes, so you are the definer of what you see to some degree. Once you become responsible for that, then you will care. That's a proper way to open up to the intellectual realms where there has been an acknowledgement of emotion. Emotional stability means imagine somebody, person A and person B, okay? Person B comes and says to person A, "You're wrong. Life is real. Life is like this. Reality is like this. What are you saying?" Da, 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 like machine gun uh, degradation. And so person B says this to person A. Now person A can think on the same level as person B, which is not efficient. Let me tell you why. But you can try to think like person B, like this guy's saying that. Well, I'm gonna mirror what he said to me. I'm gonna be a mirror of the same intensity he's showing me. You know, and so person A, imagine in one version, looks at person B and says the same intensity. Intellectual battle begins. Now, imagine if emotional stability was the priority. So person B has come to person A insulted, and person A for a second doesn't say a single word and looks at this human being in front of it and wonders what is motivating its attention. And you see there is an emotional instability. So when there's an emotional instability simultaneously occurring when a person is intellectualizing, it ultimately means you can't, it's not efficient for anybody to defeat them in rationalization, in reduction, in deduction. It's like, you know, logic has become, it's like a shield and a sword. It's a sword because it, excuse my language, cuts through the bullshit, but it's a shield in that uh, it doesn't let the future be seen prior to pattern recognition, which could be an instantaneous experience. That means how can you define an instant? What if the proof of everything that one's inner realms has fathomed is an instant? That means if I tell, like, if somebody like Sadhguru, I remember this guy, this yogi, he said that the content of your mind is not your choice. And he said if somebody comes and says to you, apple, you're going to imagine an apple. It's just like evoke. The sound evokes the image. So, what does that mean? That means the instantaneous nature of meaning rising and falling constantly is either implying we're oscillating between two dimensions, we have all been conned by our own ignorance of multidimensionality, or the world is changing in a way where at best we can just play our instrument among its melody. And that's the invitation. That's the route to galactic awareness, not like Star Trek. Star Trek is nice. I like love science fiction, but the idea is not a external advancement only. It's an inner advancement too. Because language, when I consider it as an inner technology, we're using this technology to define ourselves. I'm using this technology right now to communicate with you. But this technology can, in no way, these words can purely show you who I am completely. You know, these words are fragments of a river of various images that I kind of cherry pick. That means if we are able to confront stillness and silence, we will be able to have any sort of external phenomena occur. So it means complete comfort and contentment with extraterrestrial contact or any sort of other dimensional contact. Because the civilization, you can see it, the entertainment industry, the various genres that are influencing people's minds is a suggestion of what people are choosing to make real for themselves. You see, it's like there when life becomes multidimensional, that means what's the first impulse? Stand in a singular way. So when things become too unknown for you, what do? You're like, okay, you step out of the room and you go engage in a more simpler pattern, you know. But for me to confront one's mind is not to even make it too sophisticated. It's just to see that there is something here. Why is a uniquely designed body? Just look at the symmetry of your body as a human being and wonder, okay, why? Why is there symmetrical biological creature-like phenomena that is extended from the earth? And you know, my theory on it, on the true nature of evolution is that it's not really the earth, it's the light. It's the relationship, I call it the on and off switch effect. And when you look at fundamentally all the narratives of human psychology, everything that has been evoked in language, it is dualistic. And I have concluded that that dualism ultimately is coming from light hitting the surface of the earth and then going away, hitting the surface of the earth, going away. And this hitting the surface of the earth and going away is another way of saying it's like the dualism of the battle between the good and the evil. So what if good and evil is just an incredible 4 billion year old overreaction to just light being on the surface of the planet and off? So I feel that it's like the study of light is existence, is it not? Our minds seem to be solar powered. Because if there is a character in a story animate, this character requires a world, and the world is accessible through the senses. And so Aldous Huxley says there are things known and things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception. And your perception relates to how senses are being processed as information. So when you look at any sort of information, just look at the word information. Like just put a space between IN and the word formation. You see, something is in a formation. All of knowledge is certain way rocks have been placed on top of one another beside a beach. in a unique Zen-like balanced way. It's a building. That's what I'm telling you. It's a construction, something that is being constantly constructed. I'm going to share with you this science fiction thing I had wrote about a world where this advanced alien, liberated, enlightened alien had come, and this advanced, enlightened alien, how can I say it? Yeah, here's the thing: the advanced enlightened, I remember now. The advanced enlightened alien, he causes every person, like a vast amount of the beings on that planet, the human beings on that planet, they have to all carry a giant boulder. And this advanced alien advanced human being civilization to such a degree. Next, like imagine like he advanced the human civilization like by 10,000 years, but he put it a precursor condition that they all had to carry this giant boulder behind their backs. So like in a strange way, like through advanced technology, 8 billion people are taking turns, one by one, and carrying this boulder. And this advanced alien said you have to follow this boulder cannot be put down. If it's put down, all your technologies would be shut off. And so the whole philosophy and psychology taught in the schools of that world after the alien leaves is that should mankind put down the stone or should it not? It becomes like children's philosophy assignments in the world I'd created there. And so what happens is the alien leaves, and so hundreds of years, so many years go back, and as the story, the way I wrote it, the alien doesn't come back. And so these human beings are eventually carrying this rock to a point where eventually civilization evolves to a degree that it dares to put down the rock. It becomes such a modern civilization, dares to put down this giant rock that every human being had in turn had to carry on their backs. And so what happens is that when humanity puts down that rock, they see nothing happens, all their technologies remain, and it was the last lesson of that advanced extraterrestrial to human civilization. You have learned to carry your own weight as a species. That is the ultimate honor of human life. Anyways, sorry guys, hang on. I just need to drink something. you know, it's a shame. I have to brush up on my Greek mythology, but if I remember correctly, in Tartarus, which was the underworld in Greek mythology, there was a labyrinth made by this next level kind of like designer. And this is the labyrinth where the centaur was present. And so when I look at reality and the complexity of the problems that an advancing civilization has, whether on this planet or any other planet, it would ultimately be to define limits, and then purpose can be extracted. As purpose is extracted from an identification with one's limits, the only approach is the limitless. So life ultimately changes from a mindset of a thought carrying memories to becoming a momentum, a rhythm, a conscious, your waking state becomes the indistinguishable. Uh, how can I tell you? I say it, you attain the crystal responsible mind. That means just like how your body has a symmetry, your free will abides with the symmetry of your both brain hemispheres. And the only way it's doing that is because it's forgetting the ideology and it's experientially relating to the moment. And guys, if there's no further questions in the chat section, the end has arrived, and the beginning knew it before it had begun. I don't know. I don't know what it is. For me, it's culture. What is its point? What is its purpose? Should we build a human civilization that's just self-entertainment till the day we die? Should we just increase the quality of self-entertainment and just have be automatically pulled in into the vacuum cleaner of a cyber cultural kind of simulated world? Strangely, once you have served your mind, which means your egoic whatever archetype you entertain has abided by some constant witnessing sense of knowing, like a flow of knowing. Freedom allows for the greatest discipline. Your mind has no choice as a character in a story to seek the beyond, which ultimately would mean freedom for it. Your body has nowhere to go. Your body is stardust. And so I wondered when we break up the atom, what should I identify? When I see an atom, should I see just a sphere or should I see three particles inside a sphere? And so it's as if like, is the electron hallucinating? Is the atom hallucinating? And then you see the way language has been imposed on a changing world. This recognition that language is being taken seriously in a changing world, that's why I say be playful with language. It's like the weather. I'm telling you, sometimes thoughts can be like the weather. The more it's in your conscious free will, the less your attention is there. But it's like every being has their own walk, and you have to discover your walk. And the only way it is, which is believe it or not, it's the opposite of this is the counterculture of a deceptive world. To no longer be deceptive. You know what that means? That means having the audacity to consciously live in this life in the simplest way that your intelligence has originated. I am telling you, a lot of people's incapability is because they have rejected their own inner child because society changed them too quick. The inner child is literally like a sort of emotion that the child should have matured more in, but then was pushed into a next phase. Because what life is that every person is having a different experience based on how their attention is kind of navigating through the day. And really what it is experiences are the fingers of the programmer resculpting the values of the mind as it moves as it navigates. So it's kind of like we are in a symbiosis with what the world is telling us we should be and what we are telling the world to be. And the balance of it comes from witnessing, I find. Witnessing means that, like, hold an object around you, any object that's around you, and as you've held it, you see you're witnessing this object, you're observing it. This object, you're not inside the object is outside of you. Now, if in one's lifetime there comes a moment where they can see the same way they're observing the object, they have been observing the whole moment, they have been observing every thought ever manifest, then the observer of the thought is the living mind, is the living unknown. And at that point, it's a reversal. So it's like you have been serving your mind as a blind, honest fool, and then suddenly there's a shift. And in that shift, I don't know how to say it, but it's as if 50% of life you're living as a known creature in the unknown, and then 50% of your life it's like the unknown living in through awakening, opening its eyes through knowledge. There's a story of this Shaolin. This is the last story I'm going to say, and then I'm going to end off, guys. But this story is about a Shaolin, about a kid, this son of a carpenter. This this child of a this child of a carpenter. This child. Oh my god. The way I said something made me laugh. One day, a carpenter sees his son come up to him and be like, "Dad, I want to be a Shaolin monk. I don't want to. I don't want to just carve wood all day. Like, what is this?" And the father's like, "Son, my father was a carpenter, and his father was a carpenter, and you know the whole story." And the son's like, "No, Dad, I need to be a Shaolin monk. I don't know why, but it's like I have to be." And the father's like, "All right, son. I mean, who cares what you do? We're all creatures on a rock, anyways." you know. And so what happens is the father takes the son, and the father at that time he leaves the son would every day help him, and the son was helping him build this giant table. So the son gets prepares everything, and he goes. And the moment they go by the entrance of the Shaolin monk school, strangely the headmaster has come for a walk. So the headmaster is strangely by the entrance. And the father is there with the son going there. And the moment the son sees this Shaolin master, the son goes and does this traditional Shaolin bow, you know. And this Shaolin, this Shaolin bow, what do you call it? This Shaolin bow in front of the headmaster and says, "Please accept me in your school." Some respectful thing he says. And then the father's there looking, and the headmaster is smiling. Both the father and son are, the father and the headmaster is smiling as the son, as this kid's taking it too extreme and he's bad, you know? And so there's a nod. There's a nod from the headmaster to the father that, okay, we will accept him. And so the father in that moment realizes, okay, this kid definitely has a soul of a Shaolin monk. And the father says goodbye to his son. There's a, let's say family moment, family TV moment, hugging moment. That's pretty much the last stronghold of decency is a hug in television. This kid stays there for many years. And the first couple of years, he's going along with everybody. He's going on through the unique training, and he's, a great student. Not the top of his class, but close. And what happens is One day, one day, the headmaster comes to the kid and says, takes him out of the training as he's doing it with everybody else. And he takes the kid and he says, you have to sit in this room. And he doesn't say why. He just instructs this kid as if he's on that next level Shaolin headmaster monk kind of intuition level, wisdom level, anyways, what happens is the kid is kind of told to go in a room. There's a bucket of water, and the Shaolin monk says, with the palm of your hand, you have to slap this bucket of water. And this kid at first doesn't say anything, you know, and he just does it. He's like, okay, maybe this is temporary. Maybe I did something wrong. What is this? And days go by where he's slapping this, and he suddenly realizes this seems to be a long term thing. The kid even tries to find moments to say something, but every time, the headmaster says, "No, keep doing this. You have to do this. This is your destiny." Something like that. The kid is constantly, this Shaolin monk kid is like slapping the water every day. He's like, "What is this? This doesn't even make sense. Like if I did a chore, it would make more sense, you know." But no, his practice is just to slap water with the palm of his hands. And I don't know why really, but like I'll tell you why like that. But you'll forget. Just I'll continue. So many days pass by, the kid stops counting, and he's constantly slapping water. He's given up and trying to find meaning from his own realm, inner realm, and he's constantly doing this practice. There comes a day where all the monks get like a sabbatical, and this kid goes back. He goes back and he finds himself knocking at the door, and the door opens, and it's his, like, the second oldest brother. And the second oldest brother, it's like he hasn't grown up around him, so he doesn't, it's kind of like a stranger to his older brother. So his father suddenly sees his son has returned. He's like, no way, my Shaolin monk son has returned. This is next level, And so in that moment, what happens is that giant table he was working on is now placed in their house. This giant table, and it's a big family. And so the father's like, my son, my Shaolin monk son has returned. Sit at the front of the table. And so the older brother is on one side, and the father is on one side. The second older brother is beside on the other side, or on the father's side. Let's say the mother's on the other side, or the other side of the table. Anyways, what happens is, as they're about to eat dinner, or let's say they've sat down after dinner, the father says, "Son, tell us, show, demonstrate us, like tell me something that's next level about the Shaolin monks. Like, what did you learn?" The father asks this from this kid, and this kid gets so angry that he's like, holy shit, I've just slapped water all day. Like if I had to write a resume, I'd say I slapped water all day. So this kid is like, he's like in his mind, he's like, I didn't learn anything, I missed out. And so in that instant, he gets angry. And you know how sometimes people are sitting at a chair and they get angry, they slap the table and get up with that anger? This kid, he instantly, just the thought, just the precision of the thought of the, what do you call it? The thought of uh, just his hand hitting the table. His hand hits the table, and the giant chunk of this table just breaks. And the father is shocked. This is like beyond superior human ability, like beyond any human ability the father's seen. And the kid's shocked too. They're like, "Oh my god!" And suddenly it clicks in that what the kid was enduring was mastery, the road to mastery. And so think of it this way: you're now a conscious being, and now we're talking about conscious mastery. Conscious mastery is another way of saying be aware. Life is a presence of awareness as various personalized selves. Da Vinci says, I don't know, it's a quote ascribed to Da Vinci: to develop a complete mind, study the science of art, study the art of science, learn to see, realize how everything connects to everything else. In other words, if you want to, or let me say it like this: it's like both brain hemispheres are rhythmically stabilized through the observer, through the field of the observer, the activity of the knower. So I'm saying it's like you're aware of your body, great. You're aware of your name and your ideology, great. Now are you aware of the whole moment as being itself the whole moment? That's the kind of, I thought soul like in shows was like a Casper, you know. I remember even in my youth kind of coming across a book that was called Body, Mind, and Spirit, and there was this constant, fragmentation of this one natural phenomena that's happening. And so the mind is very, very advanced. I feel we're going to evolve beyond judging communication to trying to extract and see what was the value in its origin. What, it's like sometimes it's not about where you are, it's about what you make of where you are. And just to say one last thing about the title: endlessly looping infinite cylindrical dimensions. Imagine a spinning cylinder, and there are the two circles are the circular planes are again chaos and order, and the darkness and the light. And so we can say the experience of seasons is like our inner life is dualistic, our outer life to some degree is singular, but the dualistic life and its engagement in the outer life, because the outer life is cyclical and the inner reality is just dualistic, it's kind of like in the gap between duality, there's an infinite loop. So that's kind of like the aim of this talk. So, anyways, whoever's listened, thanks for tuning in. And I don't know, I hope this talk was helpful. Much blessings and also.